May 25th, Memorial Day weekend, Saturday. You said Memorial Day weekend, so don't let me stop without talking about that as well, because I love the fact that it's on Memorial Day weekend. Pinkster, you know what? That is a amazing segue you just made, because it was also the Dutch that settled in South Africa and are connected to the history of whites in South Africa. And I am curating a Pinkster Festival at historic Hudson Valley in Sleepy Hollow, New York. I was commissioned to write some poetry for an educational website that ended up winning a Webby Award about slavery in the North. And they're educating people that think that there was no slavery in the North, but there was. It just wasn't an agrarian sort of economy, and so it wasn't as big business. But slavery, like I said, everything in America made everything go for 250 years, even in the North. And this holiday was originally a celebration of the Dutch Pentecost, but the Dutch settled New York, so there were a lot of wealthy Dutch merchants, and most of those wealthy Dutch merchants had enslaved people doing all of the real work for them. And this site is called Philipsburg Manor, and the Phillips family, is one of those wealthy Dutch families. And the Phillips, they sold all kind of things, but they were also in shipping. And most American merchants in shipping from the 1600s, 1700s, they were shipping slaves as well. Every group did slavery different, but the Dutch gave their enslaved people off for their celebration of their Pentecost. And as the years progressed, the Dutch were more interested in becoming white and less about their Dutchness. So they stopped celebrating the Pentecost as much. They started celebrating things like 4th of July, and Election Day was big back then. And the African Americans, it was still basically, it wasn't just a day. It was like, let's say 4 or 5 days. I don't know exactly. But it was a time where they had freedom, and a time where they could go visit other families and people that they weren't able to see without freedom. And it was also a time they were allowed to celebrate their Africanness and what they could retain of their identity. The form of slavery here wasn't as necessary, abuse and really attack your identity as much as it was necessary in the South to get the sort of compliance that they needed to run that kind of operation. So they were able to celebrate their humanity. Like I said, as white folks started becoming white and losing their Dutchness and whatever, the African Americans appropriated Pinkster, and Pinkster became a fully black thing by the middle of the 1700s. And there were black people that celebrated, there were indigenous people in the area that celebrated it, and of course some Dutch still celebrated. And it was a time where kind of the social walls came down. And there are a lot of historic sort of carnival related traditions in America or any kind of colonial areas where there are these holidays where the social walls and the social barriers come down, and everybody's able to celebrate and be together. And Pinkster was how we did that in the greater New York area. So I ran into Pinkster because I was working with them on this other thing. So I went to just visit them because they invited me to see their space, do some research. I was like, wow, this is a fascinating piece of history. I've never heard of this day. But the way that they were celebrating was in a historical sense. And so it had a very Renaissance fair vibe, and people were dressed up. And that was funky to me. I was like, ooh, this is cool. And I feel where you're going. But dressing up that way, I was like, we need to modernize this, because I love all of the energy behind the holiday. But that time period and a lot of these images can be traumatizing for some people. Let's have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. You have a lot of people talking about, we don't have to keep doing Black history, let's talk about Black future. So I wanted to bring a sort of remembering the past and reimagining the future energy to it, paying tribute to the ancestors, but also what are we going to do for our descendants at the same time. We work to revive it, I don't know if it's connected to the way other people celebrate Pinkster. I know how I encountered it, and we are celebrating in a new way because we want it to be something that African American people are interested in celebrating. African American people are not going to celebrate things like that in a Ren Fair kind of way. That whole Renaissance Fair culturally energy is not very comforting to us because we didn't have our freedom at that. We want to express ourselves as free individuals, and so we love to pay respect to our enslaved ancestors and all of the energy we came from, but more in the way that we've persevered and transcended that. We want to center our perseverance rather than center oppression or center our, the enslaved state that we were in. It's just as an artist and as somebody who has curated arts events, we worked with some crump dancers, and the intersection between the poem and the music and them was just off the chain. Hallowed Dreams and his team Dreams Fam. We have a real in West African griot this year, Yakuba Sissoko. Last year, who did we have? One of my creative directors is DJ Goodwill, Will Ellis. We just have an amazing team. I believe Denzel Washington School of the Arts Gospel Choir is going to be with us this year. And Vashti Dance Group, which is a dance group from the Hudson Valley area. So it's this kind of combination of New York City folks from the Hudson Valley area. And we want something hip and fun. We're and happy. I want to focus on the Spring Festival because it's in May. The flowers are out. We had a beautiful day last year. Hopefully we get blessed with another one. And spring festivals are universal. Everybody wants to come out in the spring and be in the dresses. We have flower crowns. There will be flower crowns all over. There's a flower crown station. And celebrate renewal. Not just historic and political renewal, but just the renewal of the spring and coming back outside. And renewal is fertility, that the hormones is in the air in the spring. Like it's time to come back outside and feel each other's humanity and celebrate humanity. And that's universal. And I feel that has a lot to do with how it was celebrated in the 17th. Why not connect to that, educate people a little bit, just have another reason to center storytelling, center some beautiful Black creators, some Black artistry, also give some Black businesses some time to shine, talk about enslaved history. Now, talking about enslaved history is an act of resistance to the fascist kind of world that we're living in and all of the silencing. Just talking about enslaved history to me is very gratifying because they don't want us talking about enslaved history. I think the more we do, the more we deconstruct these oppressive structures that are trying to curate and retell the story of America and whitewash it, take all of the Black contribution out of it, and take all of the white oppression out of it. And so I'm very inspired to push back against that with the oral tradition, which is undefeated. You could erase, you could burn books, change the internet, you could scrub people's shit off of Wikipedia. But if we tell each other our stories and pass them down to human bodies, through human bodies, the truth will persevere.